All right, not only are we on camera, recorded, so I know Tiffany will likely have others join the meeting once it's in progress, but thanks for taking some time out today to talk about money, which is one of our favorite topics. And we're going to talk specifically about sales tax as being a means to promote our park system. So hopefully that is the webinar that you intended to log on into today. So we'll just do some brief introductions and then I'll give you an overview of what our time will look like. So I am Roxanne Miles. I'm the Pierce County Parks Director, but I'm also the chair of WRPA's Legislative Committee. Mary?
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I am Mary Dodsworth. I'm with the City of Lakewood Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, and I work with Roxanne on the Legislative Committee, and I'm also our WRPA liaison to the WWRC, which is our partner for Ledge Day. So we'll be chatting more about that stuff later.
Thanks. Hunter?
Hello, everybody. I'm Hunter George. I'm also joined by Bonnie the cat, who has turned her back and is silently judging all of you. This is what she does all day. Hunter George, I'm with Metro Parks Tacoma. I manage government affairs. I'm going to wear another hat today as a member of the Fircrest City Council. So I'm going to, because both of my employers benefit from this sales tax. And then I work with Roxanne and the team on the Legislative Committee.
Okay. Thanks, Hunter. Doug?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Doug Levy, and I'm here in my role as state lobbyist for WRPA, and really glad you could all join us. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. So we thought, the best use of the time, we want to get right into the things that we hope are most helpful to you. I'm going to start with just taking you into the RCW so you can see where there are different uses for sales tax, also where and how Pierce County is so privileged to have a share of that tax right now, and where we hope to be adding some legislation in the future. So after that general overview, Hunter and Mary and I are actually going to talk about how we are utilizing our share of sales tax now. The kind of rules around it is a little bit different than what's in the legislation, but still it's pretty universally beneficial. And what it kind of took to get the support for the voters to pass something when it was on the books we've woven in a little bit to that. Then Doug will talk about the legislation that we're trying to advance in order to make sure parks can be clearly called out and be one of the beneficiaries of the share of sales tax. And we'll talk about really what that advocacy looks like moving forward. As we dive in today, ask questions, right? This really, we want to make sure that when you're curious about something, don't hesitate to ask in the moment. We really want to make sure you get all you can out of this training. We built in lots of time to make sure we could take questions as we go as well. So go ahead and use the chat function. So we don't have that. Or raise your hand and the other folks will help keep an eye on that. We will definitely pause to make sure we're answering those questions at the end of each section as well before we move on to the next one. So with that, are there any questions before we get going? All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make that bigger. All right. So, not all of us, are you still seeing the screen? No. It didn't like how I clicked. How's that?
Nope. Still just seeing you.
We still just have you, Roxanne. Here we go.
All right,
there we are.
There's the buttons I was looking for. Perfect. So, the reason we're kind of facilitating this as a legislative committee is because these are authorities that get established by the state legislature, right? So all the tools that we have, if we want to broaden their use, we need to do some legislative action to change anything that's in the revised Code of Washington. And we also might just need to know that there's already tools available that you may already qualify for or want to do some research into, because then within each of these tools, you're able to look at how you're able to get the authority that might already be established. And there is some capacity where certain jurisdictions may be using some of these other sales and use taxes to augment and fund their parks and recreation programs, but there is not currently a single one that you will just see by title. This is here exclusively for parks. So we're not going to go in to detail or even click into each of these, but I just want you to see some of the titles that exist, and you might want to explore and hear a little bit more. You can see the transportation, but then it talks about public facility districts. Sports stadiums for a long time have had this benefit and a tax specifically around public sports facilities. Often these taxes are levied at a large city or a county level. And so the folks who are all voting on the particular taxes want to make sure that they are seeing the benefit in voting for that tax. And that's actually one of the tricks I think that it took to get the zoo and trek and wildlife facility tax we're going to talk about today through, is because it became this partnership between very important public facilities that were of interest to the community, as well as making sure everyone across the county saw benefit in actually passing it. You'll see, further down some other elements that come in beyond this criminal justice type of taxes, special stadium sales, public facilities in rural counties. This might be something where those counties that are smaller, that are considered rural, there is some opportunity for them to already take advantage of this particular tax, even if you don't have a large municipality that's going to maybe carry a vote forward. Regional centers, many of us have joint efforts and facilities within our jurisdictions that have a much broader audience. There's some very specific terms around that one, but if you're thinking about a regional center, you at least might want to go in and explore whether it might be viable. It's this little one here that by the title, you just specifically see a zoo, aquarium, and wildlife facility that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. But definitely just wanted to make sure you could see that there are a number of others existing sale and use taxes. A lot of times you can see there's various services from health to sports and recreation to transportation. There's also a lot of interest in cultural facilities. And since we all manage very different types of facilities, sometimes we might see ourselves fitting into one of these categories a little bit differently or better than another. I see Doug is given a chat there. So I'm going to open this tax. Now, one of the things that you'll notice and why probably most jurisdictions can't take advantage of this particular one, because you see this joint request of a metropolitan park district, a city with a population of more than 150,000, and a county legislative authority in a county with a national park and a population of more than 500,000 and less than 1,500,000, the county must submit an authorizing proposition to the county voters, fixing and imposing a sales and use tax. So part of the thing that I think got this passed was not only the advocacy that was able to be generated behind it, but as far as the rest of the state legislatures, they knew and understood upon passage that it was only going to pretty much impact Pierce County in fitting these particular guidelines as it moved forward. So within this tax itself, obviously people who love zoo, trek, and the larger facilities were behind it, but they also knew in order to get the majority of votes across the county, there was a determination to make sure that there was funding for the parks, 50% distributed on a per capita basis, set out by the most recent population figures to the cities, and through this allocation formula, the counties and cities and towns in Pierce County are getting a share of this. One of the nice things is there's also not an expiration date on this. There is this population threshold that fits in, so we are benefit in that we don't have the renewal period that the new legislation might carry, but we also have to keep meeting those requirements, and we've been able to learn quite a few things about how we utilize this and how we keep public support for this tax in and of itself. So are there any questions about this, kind of where you find this legislation, and maybe why Pierce County already is getting some share of park sales tax when others are not? Okay. With that, then I'm going to turn it over to Hunter and have him talk through, especially because they were the Metropolitan Park District. They still are. They have the zoo and track, and they are the ones that really, I think, helped start trying to get the public support behind this. And we are grateful that it took a larger county vote and that the county and the larger cities in Pierce County were written into this.
All right, great. Thank you, Roxanne. Hi, everybody. And I'm going to wear two hats here for the next couple of minutes. In my day job, I work for Metro Parks. I manage government affairs. This has been kind of a fun exercise. This was 20 years ago. Voters approved this in 2000. And so I wasn't here. And so it's been fun to go back and look at that. And I'm going to show you a couple things. I moonlight, I call it my night job. I'm a member of the Fircrest City Council. And Fircrest, if you don't know, is a very small community, a little suburb of Tacoma. We have 7,000 residents. We have 3 full-time members of our Parks and Recreation staff. So I work for a big resource-rich parks agency, and I also work with a small city that has a very small, not resource-rich parks department, and the sales tax benefits both. So I'm going to show you how. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I have just a few quick slides to show you. Let's go full screen. There we go. I can see Roxanne. So can you nod if you see can you see that I'm sharing the screen? Okay. So as Roxanne said, so this happened in 2000. Voters approved the tax increase. As she noted, it was a compromise. This originated from support of the 2 zoos, Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium in Tacoma, and then Northwest Trek Wildlife Park in Eatonville. Metro Parks owns and operates both of those. And they were trying to figure out how to get more resource to support that. Animals are very expensive. One of my favorite park board actions that they take every year, we all get a kick out of it whenever they approve all the contracts for the animal feed, that the stuff we have to buy to feed tigers and elephants and stuff is pretty interesting. It's not your typical municipal expenditure. But anyway, so they agreed to this split where 50% of the sales tax revenue coming in goes to the 2 zoos, and the other 50% gets distributed among all the parks agencies, the parks departments throughout the county. That includes Metro Parks. And so as you see from that third bullet there, so it's based on population. Tacoma represents 25% of the population of the county. So Metro Parks gets 25% of the 50% share for parks. What does that mean in terms of dollars? That last bullet point there in bold, we do a biennial budget, so that's a 2-year number, but about $4.5 million out of 29 million in total revenues for parks. Again, not separating the Zoological Division, which I'll show you in a second, but $4.5 million out of our $29 million in revenues that supports parks. That's a significant number, and I don't even want to imagine what our park system would look like without that. So then quickly looking at the Zoological Division, Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium is much larger than Northwest Trek as an operation, and so that's how we split the money there. But as you can see, in terms of dollars, it's 18.6 million over 2 years, and out of 51.5 million in total revenue. Again, cannot imagine operating those zoos without it. And then for Furcrest, I was looking in our Furcrest budget for 2022, where you list you've seen all your municipal budgets and how you list your property taxes and utility taxes and all that kind of stuff. We call it in our budget, it's always been called the zoo tax. And for 2022, we've budgeted revenue of $79,000 out of total expenses for that department of $272,000. 79,000 out of 272,000 is coming from this sales tax. That's a big deal. And again, I don't want to imagine how my little tiny parks department, what we would do if we didn't have that. It's the pie chart on the left that I'd call your attention to. This adds up to 20%, that orangish slice there. The 23.1 million, that's the total, that's the 50% share going to the zoos, the 18 point something million, plus the 4.48 million for parks adds up to 23.1. It's 20% of our revenue, y'all. And that would be a big hit if we didn't have it, and allows us to think about if you had 20% more, what would you do? It's a lot. And then my last two slides, I had a little fun. Thanks to Roxanne, I went down a rabbit hole yesterday and I looked up for the year 2000, the election. And so this is from the voter's guide from the year 2000 in Pierce County. And this was it was Proposition 1, and here was your ballot title. And as I would note here, I'm not going to make you read this all that type, but to provide funds to acquire, improve, rehabilitate, maintain, or develop regional and local parks. It's pretty open-ended. We can, there's not a whole lot of strings attached to it, which is great. And then finally, this really made me happy. So when you scroll down, what I did is I split it into two slides, but this is the for and against statements that were in the voter's guide. And it was kind of fun to read this. I wasn't with the district 20 years ago, but particularly on the lower right, the rebuttal of statement 4. First of all, Roxanne, I do not miss Will Baker. That guy he opposed everything. But they claimed the funding would be diverted to other city programs. Well, we're not part of the city, we're Park District. That it would result in no extra funding for the zoo and trek, therefore no improvements. Obviously, I just showed you that's not the case. There's 18 million going directly to the zoos. And in fact, that's because of the way this particular piece of legislation is structured. There's a zoo trek authority that was created that's several members of the Pierce County Council, several members of the Tacoma City Council, and then 2 other folks from small cities. So there's a group of electeds overseeing it and making sure that this money is being spent the way it's supposed to. But it made me happy to look at this and really to look at in that upper left corner, kind of what did they promise? And I can tell you from reading that, we've done those things for the last 20 years. And so we're really, really grateful for this. And this is where Pierce County is the only county in the state that benefits, that has this opportunity. And we think all of you should have that opportunity. So I will stop sharing and happy to take any questions or handing along, I think, to Mary is next.
Before we dive into Mary, just to kind of marinate, I think you brought up a lot of really good things, Hunter, on the practical side. Like,
yeah.
One, yes, we have to get this passed, but I know a lot of people have questions on, once it's in the legislature, how do I get it passed? Like, how do we actually get the support? And I think you hit on a number of things that come forward, and you can tell there was, conversation, and there's always going to be that conversation in the community. And ours has some of that. Larger cities have to show that you're not just relying on park sales tax. That was in the legislation. We couldn't supplant. So you'll see when I did that, it's all new things that came on board after 2000. And while the legislation we're talking about doesn't require that, I think just people need to think in advance, if you really want this tool, how to already start getting those folks who have been waiting on a facility for a long time, or they have a beloved facility that they might lose, because those are going to be your 4 people who are going to rally and get people to actually get this passed. In addition to it being 20% of their budget, one of the best benefits is this is a special revenue fund. What does that mean? You get a fund balance and you roll it forward and you use it, right, in future years, especially those of us who also have a share of general fund, which dissolves at the end of the year, right? That doesn't carry over and it gets reallocated all the time. And that's what really is important to anchor a park system, is the fact that you have at least a share that the public has said is specifically for parks and doesn't get rated for public safety or anything else, because it really is voter approved for this specific reason that's pretty important. And Doug and I have been having some conversations about, equity and how we help people understand what we do and how beneficial what we do is for the broader community. But this is one thing where sales tax, right? Your tourists, sales tax paid on commercial industry. You have, food that is not subject to sales tax. So when you're talking about the burden upon your residents, the facts of sales tax can actually come out a lot of different people's pockets, and we take what they spend and use it to give them a park system. So, one of the things that we are doing is creating things to help make this case with the legislature that might become tools that can be helpful to you as well, if you feel like you need to talk to your leadership or legislators or council about getting on board with this, that they can see how you can make a real difference in your community if you have it. All right, with that, seeing no questions, Mary.
I'll jump right in. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. One of the things, first of all, I've been around forever. Hunter, I was here when that got passed. I was working with the town of Stillicum at the time, and I remember the conversations. And again, as Roxanne outlined the legislation, I mean, it was like you had to be 6'3", left-handed with polka dots to be able to be eligible for this. They obviously wrote this legislation specifically for this use, this community. And it was a conversation that it was all coming for zoo and Trek, which is great, beloved agencies. But when it had to go through the county council, which is part of the legislative process, the communities went, well, wait a minute, we want a piece of this action. And so it was a compromise. There was negotiation to get to the point where it would be passed from a county perspective. And everybody got a little piece of it. The small towns and the big towns, oftentimes a dedicated tax source is often in larger communities that really have strategic thinkers or more political finesse. And so this was great because it really, I'll put on my Stillicum hat to begin with. Stillicum's a community of 6,500 people, and they benefit every year from this. We're the city of Lakewood, a community of, we always had about 60,000. We just got a few more from the last census, so we'll hopefully get more money. But so we also benefit from it. So for the town, and everybody can use it. The great part about the way that this is written is that everybody can use it for what they need to use it for. It's very, very flexible. And of course, the legislation that we're promoting, which we'll talk about in a bit, has a few more restrictions to it. But as you saw that big, long list of sales tax, it's really a hard sell. And so you've really got to be able to package it in a way that's beneficial to everybody so people know what they're paying for. But for instance, the town of Stillicum, they have about 6,500 people. So they get about 72,000. In 2020, they got 72,000. In 2021, they got about 85,000. And what they use it for is that they created a park enhancement fund, their own special fund to put those resources in. And they wanted it to be kind of more for one-time special projects. So they use it for capital. equipment replacement, playground replacement, Eagle Scout projects, those special projects. You have a big community coming and they're going to order a ton of chips or plants or something. They usually use it for special projects. It's not paying for staff. It's not paying for ongoing operations. They're kind of doing it as a one-time special fund. And as Roxanne said, they can stockpile or hold those funds year after year. If they know there's a big thing coming up, there's a property they may want to purchase down the road, that they can utilize some of those funds to leverage for either purchasing or maybe bonding. So that's a good thing for that small little community that never would pass this on their own, would never probably have the professional expertise to suggest it and then go through the legislative process to do it, right? So, but they are a true beneficiary of that. So the city of Lakewood, brand new city, 60,000 people. We weren't even in the conversation probably at the time when this was going on, but definitely benefited from it. So I'd say in 2019, we got about 665,000. I always figure we get about, still can get about 10% of what we get. And in 2021, we got 670,000, and we're already 100,000 ahead of where we were a year ago, because the revenue forecasts are really good. People are spending a lot of money right now because they're at home with nothing else to do. So they're buying a lot of stuff. And again, that's benefiting our community. So we'll probably get over $700,000. And what we do with it, how we use it, is we aren't using it for capital. We could if we wanted to, but how we're doing it is I have a return on investment requirement. So we have a cost recovery requirement. And so I'm taking all of the resources that we get. I used to divide it into my 5 different divisions, but now our finance director has taken it and divides it between parks, which typically you don't generate a lot of revenue on your basic parks, recreation, special events, and our senior activity center, and also admin. So it's covering, part of me. And so it's divided proportionately on expenditures, but all of those monies, whatever we get, say it's $700,000, will be divided amongst those. That helps my cost recovery. So I'm able to keep low rates for programs and services, provide low and no cost activities. And in our community, we have a lot of really low income areas, some poverty areas. And so for us, that's super important. It gets all those folks engaged and provide some of that equity piece. And so one of the things that Doug will talk a little bit about is that's really important right now. People are really looking at where are your resources being spent. And if you can say, I'm going to be serving these underserved areas, that might be another way of, again, selling it. Every community is going to have to sell it what works for you. But we want to create the legislation so it's not only for 6'3", left-handed people that wear polka dots. We want it to be open to everybody, and so that you have access to it or the opportunity to use it in your community. So, so we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'm going to pass the gavel back to Roxanne. I think she's going to share a little bit about how they generate revenue and what they use it for. Again, just to give you that information on how it can be used really flexibly in your community for really what you need, what Furcrest needs, what Big Metro Parks needs, what we need. But are there any questions before we hand it over back to Roxanne? Okay, Roxanne, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Mary. I mean, one thing I'll point out is, as we noted, that we rode the coattails with Metro Parks Tacoma and the love of the animals. And it clearly defined in that legislation, right, the share that everyone got. The local options funding going forward doesn't obligate or put everyone in. So you might want to just start thinking about who are those partners. And, if you're in a greater metropolitan area, what it does say is that there won't be overlap where the county taxes people once and then the city taxes and gets their separate one. People will, if they're in both of those taxing districts, will have to have some sort of memorandum that establishes. So the nice part is our legislation said that, and the county operates as the county treasurer, so it just magically shows up and gets sent to Mary and to other folks. And of course, the financial folks are accounting those within, different funds and different funding sources. Let's see if I can do this more expeditiously this time. Okay, so don't be haters, because this is a very new scenario for me when you're looking at my almost $180 million. A lot of it is double counted, but I just wanted to share, this is coming directly out of the county's budget book. Some of these are operating funds. This conservation futures actually is almost all a grant program. That construction are actually capital grants or acquisition grants that go to other folks. Parks and Recreation is my share of the general fund across 2 years. These impact fees, most of it, this is what I collect, and then it gets transferred into these construction buckets, which are the largest in the history of life going on now. But this park sales tax line, you know, the 13 million, some of that is new collection that will happen over the biennium. One of the phenomenons that happened, and especially for the county, is that with online ordering, people doing more ordering online instead of in stores in cities and towns, sorry, we're getting a much larger share. So again, it's a fund balance issue where I get to roll that forward and pool money for larger projects. So that's part of the reason that that's larger. Also in Pierce County, we're like 48% unincorporated, which is very different than, well, other urban counties, we'll put it that way. King County has very little unincorporated area. So having this dollar amount, you can see there are 16 FTEs that we have, and we have a number of new park sites that have happened since 2000 when this went into effect. Probably the most notable to share is that we did a partnership with the Puyallup School District, and they had the land. We brought the capital. We developed the sports complex on their land between an elementary and a high school. And for that, we have joint use first right of refusal privilege for 30 years that we've been doing. And then we share the maintenance cost 50-50. So having something like this really allowed a pretty phenomenal partnership. Everybody's excited because it's a good use of public funds. And they have priority, you know, Monday through Friday up to 5. And then we, as it's turned out, we actually operate it, we schedule it, we collect all the revenues for third party league and tournament use. We apply that to the cost, and then we divvy out and share the subsidy. So that's just kind of one of the really cool things that we're able to have happen. So this highlights kind of how we have this funding source. With the county, we do keep that money in a separate fund. And so I charge against that fund so that we have a clear accounting of what we have been able to do with it. This actually breaks out our staffing, you know, and so we actually have that pretty much shared across different avenues. Our parks maintenance techs are all in parks that are new to the county after 2000. And it's nice as we are now growing and building new parks that we have this maintenance and operations fund that we'll be able to stay pace with it as we move forward. We also have started a forestry program. So it's really property management. So our resource stewardship kind of element there, these planners that are building new parks, our care of natural lands. We weren't able to do a program that took care of our properties that aren't yet open until we had this park sales tax to be able to work with it. So it's made a huge difference. It can be used for administration, maintenance, operations. There's no restrictions on it. It's not the same as impact fees or second REIT that can only be used for capital. So that's been huge. Sorry, this is a little different orientation in the budget book, but notice that it can be used for capital. So our ADA improvements, which because it's an improvement, it's not bringing new capacity. Sometimes those maintenance issues are a big concern with the capital fund. So being able to have park sales tax really lets us work within the gap of being able to use this flexible funding when other ones aren't allowable. One of the things you'll notice, it says to golf course fund. So it has actually helped us get new equipment. that we've been able to replace old equipment and sustain operations without increasing cost. We have fleet that has come in. This is a big one I'll talk about in a minute when you don't have to look sideways, which is paths and trails funds. Trails are huge, and we have a growing trail system that was funded in part by motor vehicle fuel tax. That is not a reliable source. So the fact that we're actually using park sales tax to fund our growing trail system. And the more I think we are tying park sales tax to a priority in our community, and I reflect this as a strategy, especially the new legislation has to be renewed. The more you can tie it to the growth areas and what people want, then I think getting that funding renewed at the end of 10 years in order to sustain trails or something that's really important is a key factor for them. So as I mentioned with paths and trails, this line across here, this was motor vehicle fuel tax. We dropped back in 22-23 how much we expected to collect. As a matter of fact, I think because of COVID and different things, I don't think we brought in more than 500,000 in 2020, 2021. And being able to have a line item of park sales tax in order to sustain operations of a trail system that started after 2000 has been a huge thing, because everybody knows how much trail use and demand that everyone experienced at that time. So it is nice that while it comes, it's fully collected and accounted within a fund. We're able to transfer it to balance and maintain some other operations, but we have a running fund balance too that's going to help us year to year and not have to go back and compete for general fund allocations in the future. Any questions so far for any of us just on how we use it, how we track it, how we got it, how we keep people happy with it?
Roxanne, I would just say real quickly that, you know, we've all kind of shared different perspectives and uses and tracking systems. We all have different accounting systems, and all of us are willing to connect with anyone that has an interest. If, you know, what's working in Steilacoom might not be relevant at all with Metro Parks, but maybe something that we're doing in Lakewood. So all of us are happy to have, and then have our finance people talk to your finance people because they speak the same lingo. You know, we're all, you know, Parks and Recreation, we're all about sharing and caring and helping each other out. So just know that those are resources that we're happy to share, especially on, you know, it's a short and sweet format, but beyond there, if there's something that you think, oh, that's really going to matter to my community, we're happy to help you get there.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Barry. Yeah, and to the point, the first step is to get it passed, but once it's passed, there's that whole other piece. And so I think because we navigated that process some, and I think you all know, I think the big key for all of this was people were passionate about things that were not happening, right, in their park system because of the competition with general fund. And so when you have people who might be really great advocates are wanting to see more and to make sure that what they vote for stays with the park system, that's really one of the great advantages, I think, of the share of sales tax. And of course, they're voting to tax people who are visiting the areas and not just themselves. So with that, we will turn it to Doug.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for carving out some of your time for this. I think it's a great discussion and helped me learn and relearn a lot. I think the 2000 effort with Pierce County and the zoo and Metro Parks Tacoma came about before I had started representing WRPA. I remember it as a lobbyist doing work for other cities, but it's kind of fun to go back and see how all that came together. And you know, this training really came about because we wanted you all to know that there's real value here in what we're trying to get passed with the legislature. And I think the Pierce County example shows that having this kind of money that can be flexible, that can be for maintenance, that can be for capital, you know, as Mary talked about the Steilacoom example, that can be for particular special needs. we want all of you to be able to have that kind of a tool, and we think it would be very valuable for you. You know, we've been at this a few years, and there's always the good news, bad news with this kind of a legislative effort. The good news is that we've never really had any external opponents, because when you do something like sales tax and you make it voter approved, there's not other stakeholders that say, oh my gosh, you're taking money away from me, or you're making my constituents pay, or my clients. And so, that's been very helpful to have a sales tax based tool. It's also a very flexible tool, as you heard Pierce County describe. And so that's one of the reasons when we've, worked through discussions, and Paul Simmons, who's on several years ago, even organized a work group to look at the best tools to advance to the legislature. Sales tax comes to the top because it is flexible. It can be used for a number of things. It doesn't have any sort of outside opponents. But it does come with challenges, and that's that, as the legislature has done more legislation around sales tax, one of the things that's come to the fore in recent years is that there's a growing number of legislators who have worries about the sales tax being regressive. And what do we mean when we talk about regressivity of the sales tax? I think just on a statistical percentage basis, what we mean is that when you are a lower income earner and you are paying sales tax, that tends to take a bigger percentage of your overall earnings than if you are a higher earning person paying sales tax, where it is more of a hindrance to your overall earnings. But as Roxanne said a few times, remember that sales tax is not just paid by people who live in a community, it's paid by people who come into a community. So we've been working on this for a few years, and we have a really active sponsor of the House Bill 1025 legislation in Representative Emily Wicks, who's from Everett within Snohomish County, and really thinks this is an important tool, and frankly knows that in her district, this would most likely be taken up by Snohomish County working with its cities, but they may not be an early adopter of a tool like this. So she sees it as value added as a statewide tool for local parks, because she's a believer in local parks and the outdoors. The other thing that we're working on with the legislation that I'll add this year, and I want to use a word Mary used a couple times, we think it provides an important opportunity, and that's that, we've had a very straightforward bill that says, legislature, please authorize 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax to all types of local parks agencies, be they city, county, metropolitan park district, or park and recreation district, and let them have that tool to take to their voters. This session, at Representative Wicks's encouragement, we've worked with her on language to make sure that those who would take the tool out to their voters are kind of putting an equity lens around it. And you heard Mary describe we don't want Parks and Recreation to just be about the 6'3" polka dot wearing people. We want it to be for everyone. And in all seriousness, we view this as a great opportunity to show that we really do care about diversity and equity and inclusion, and we're very willing to be, frankly, the first ever to put something like this into a sales tax authorization bill. And so we're working with Representative Wicks and Representative April Berg, the committee vice chair of House Finance, on it. And the balancing act is, we've also tried to make sure that in drafting this up, we don't do anything that puts so many hindrances and limitations around the money that you all decide it's not doable. So in other words, this is language that we've worked with the legislators on that says you should have a process in looking at this. You should have, a community-based group that advises you as you're going out to your voters. But we've very purposely stayed away from anything that says, ye shall spend X% of whatever you get from the voters on this equitable access component or this underserved community, because the revenue needs and the project needs and the maintenance needs vary so much from place to place. So that's the balancing act we've been walking. But know that, you know, this notion of an equity process that looks at your needs throughout a community and your needs to provide access to all and address imbalances and how people get served, that's a process piece of this legislation. The other thing I'll say is we're getting ready to do this again this year. That's Riley the dog starring in the video quickly there. The other thing I'll say about this one is that we need your voices on this. You know, Roxanne talked earlier about the fact that getting the legislature to authorize new sales tax, even though you will have to do the work of going to your voters, many of them still view it as a taxing mechanism. They're wary of it. They wonder if they're going to be penalized for giving you this tool. So we need as many of you as possible to speak up. And Representative Wicks, as the prime sponsor, has asked for letters of support. And I really appreciate that several agencies have already stepped forward and are doing that. I know Jill Meese is on this call from Lake Stevens, and the city of Lake Stevens has gone on record and said, this is a tool we'd like to use. And in writing, here you go, you have our support to give that authorization. But your voice, your interest is really, really critical. The other thing I'll say, because I know we have some folks from King County on this call, remember that this isn't going to be what I would call an early action tool for everybody. We know that in King County, and I think Colleen Hunsacker from Renton is on the call, and Travis Stomba, I believe, is still on here from Skyview. King County's got a higher sales tax than most every other part of the state of Washington. It may be difficult for some agencies in King County to take this tool and use it right away. But what I would offer to you as a parallel to think about is that back in 2007, the legislature authorized transportation benefit districts that could use vehicle license fees and sales taxes and take them out to their communities. And in the first few years, the legislature enacted the transportation benefit districts. There were only a few agencies that formed them. Now there are well over 100. So if we get this on the books, then I'm confident we're going to have folks that can use it. We already know that areas like Monroe and Poulsbo and Bremerton and Jefferson County and Snohomish County have some real interest. We suspect if we can get this on the books, others are going to step forward over time. I'd also say that, you know, Roxanne alluded to the fact that the legislation we're working on requires a 10-year renewal, and it has some limits on how many years you can bond against your revenues and those kinds of things. But if we get something on the books, we can always come back later and fine tune it. It's the getting something on the books that's important. Again, as a parallel, the Transportation Benefit District statute has the 10-year renewal requirement. Well, the proponents of that, now that they have over 100 users, are going back to the legislature and saying, since so many of us are using it, our communities are very accepting of it, do we need the renewal anymore? So there's always that possibility to go back and fine tune, but first we need to get this on the books. We'd love any help all of you can deliver. And if you have any questions at all, let me know. And if you have an interest in helping with your legislators, believe me, we would love that. So I'll pause there. I know Mary was going to jump in a little bit and talk about, you know, what we're doing for the coming session in terms of advocacy and days we're setting up to give you an opportunity to make your case with lawmakers. Oh, and Roxanne is putting up on the screen for any of you that want this. I think we'll have it as part of the materials for today, but this is kind of a 2-page document we've put forward that describes this legislation and the benefits of it and why we think it's so important to have this tool.
Mhm. Thanks, Doug. Does anybody have any questions for Doug right now? Before we just jump in the kind of the finale piece of this? I don't see anything coming up from the chat room. You know, a lot of the folks that are on this call or on this training, you know, you guys have been around for a while and you're really pretty comfortable with Legislative Day. And I would hope that if there's folks on here that haven't participated, that you'll really think about getting or about participating this year. It's all going to be virtual, so it makes it really easy to participate from wherever you are. But in order for us to be able to get this to happen or be available in your community, we have to get the legislative authority. We have to get this bill passed. So that's why Leg Day is really important. And yes, we will send the documents or give you information on how you can get access to all these documents, because there'll be a whole package of them, not just for this special sales tax, but for some of the other legislative agenda items that we're going to be rooting for this year. But anyway, Leg Day is going to be on January 20th. Again, it's going to be all virtual and it's really easy to participate. If you've been doing it forever, you know, it's a quick, fast conversation with your legislative folks, getting the information out. If you haven't really participated, you still can be a part of all those conversations and learn. The important thing is when you get in there to chat with them, you know, this is an off year, so we're thanking them for their support of what they've done in the past. And there's a link in the chat room in which you can register. And most of you have probably gotten this link, and you can always get it at WRPA today. But anyway, so you've got to get it on there. So we need local support. We need your communities and your agencies to support this, put it on your legislative agendas, unless, you know, they're already set. It might be too late to do that if you haven't, but your city can write a letter of support. You can give testimony at hearings. There'll be things coming up. It's often short notice, but again, it's virtual. So we really want it to be across the state, not just, you know, the big players in the world, so that the legislative body really knows. Now, we know that in your community, maybe this is not the thing that's going to work in your community. The taxation's a hard sell, but, you know, our leadership changes. You know, elections change who's sitting in that seat. And again, what might not work for your community right now might be more, they might be more interested in down the road or the next group that comes through. But again, if it's on the books, then you'd have access to use it. So it might not be your city that's doing a letter of support. Maybe there's a special interest group. Maybe there's the Friends of the Football Field, or there's the Friends of the Marsh, or something like that, that really could see this. There's not going to be a promise that all the resources go to them, but they recognize that they're always at the bottom of the list. There's never enough resources really to share it with, even though it's really an important part of your community, that they really see this as an opportunity to bring more resources into the community that can support whatever their special interests are. Because often a lot of this stuff is sold by people that, you know, have a real passion for one particular area, but they see it as good for all. So we'll have Leg Day on the 20th. And then we also have several trainings that'll be coming up, or opportunities to learn more about what's happening. We'll have Leg Day 101 to help you get sort of more confident in your ability to participate. And again, super easy. It's not scary. And so that'll be coming up on the 10th, January 10th, and you'll be getting links to that. If you signed up for Leg Day, you know, WWRC is also doing some Leg Day 101s. We've got some special presentations from our state legislative representatives, so that they can share, you know, what's happening in the world, so you can just feel a little bit more confident in what's happening this session. And as Dave Johnson, I think, just wrote in there, is this is an important tool in the toolbox. Everybody's going to use it differently. Every community is going to use it differently. You've heard already so many different ways that it's being used, but we have to have it as a tool in our toolbox to be able to use it. So let's all get involved. And then the other thing is that I know that there were a couple of folks that said, well, gosh, my city isn't really, you know, hip on this, but I want to participate because, and you can still do that too. I mean, you can learn more and participate as an individual or as a professional, or maybe you're part of another group too. one of the things is I'm in Pierce County. I have access to this right now. Our city is probably not going to pass another 1/10 for parks. We already have it, and we have a lot of flexibility with it. So when I'm in there selling it to my legislative folks who still have to agree with it, even though it's not going to necessarily benefit them or their specific community, I really emphasize how we have benefited from it, and it's important for, the goodness of the state. It's good for all those other communities because we go to these other communities. We want them to be safe places. We want to have great trail systems. We want to have clean parks and healthy places and spaces. So, if not for us, it's good for all. And so really, looking at that bigger picture that's how I do it. I go in on Ledge Day and, it's like, hey, thanks for all you do for us. And hey, this is a great resource. But really, this is important for the state. And so hopefully you'll get their support as well.
If I could make one quick addition to what Mary just shared with all of you, it's that, a couple of years ago, we did a review of all the parks and recreation ballot measures over the last 10, 15 years. And you guys don't recognize the power of parks and recreation. About 80% of them have been successful. And so, it's very rare that people say, oh my gosh, trails, fields, local parks for my kids to play in, what a terrible thing. You all are natural white hats. People love their parks. They typically want more of them, not less of them. And so if we give you this tool, I have a high level of confidence that many, many of your communities are going to want to work with you. But first, we need to get the tool.
That's right. That's right. Everybody loves parks, but they forget, that's the entity that sells the houses. That's the entity that, has that great space where we do that wonderful community festival or those concerts in the park, or was the place that I could get away from my computer for 5 minutes during this COVID thing. And it was a place for me to get outside and breathe, and I could be, socially distanced from folks. And there's just, it's the thing that people don't recognize until they've lost it, right? They don't recognize how important it is to their community until the bathrooms aren't open. And so it's, again, just one of those, we just have to be constantly selling what we do and how it's important. It's important for the economy. It's important for tourism. It's important for our kids. It's important for our gathering as a community, diversity, equity, the whole ball of wax. We are the white hats. We're the keepers of the universe. So we're what makes it happen. So anyway, just participate if you can, learn more, get other people engaged. It's a good, easy way to participate, learn more, and figure out how it works, right? Legislative authority is how we get things done, and it can really help us. It can also hinder us. So let's make it help us this time. So I think, Roxanne, you're going to tie it up with a big red bow.
That's right. Great.
Can I ask one question, Roxanne, first?
Absolutely.
This question is kind of for Doug. So I've always had a hard time with the why legislators don't authorize things that then go back to the voters when something's voter. So again, can you touch on outside of what would you say their main hesitancies are, or can you restate those outside of the regressive tax? Because I get that as well. But outside of the regressive tax, what tend to be, generally speaking, legislators' hesitancy towards, this type of proposal, where it's not immediately statewide. Everyone has a new tax. It's the local control kind of thing. I've always had a hard time wrapping my head around that.
Yeah, me too. I think the three things, Travis, that I'd say very briefly. The growing concern about regressivity, and I think we have some answers to that. The fact that you bring in visitors who wouldn't otherwise pay it. We've told legislators if Parks and Recreation has to rely more on fees, that's actually more regressive than sales tax. So we've answered that. There's also legislators who equate any tax authorization as being a tax vote. There's some Republican members who have brought that up time and again. And there's legislators who say, well, it's not really going to get used in my area. And so why should I vote for it? I doubt King County is going to use this anytime soon, and I represent King County. So it's not a help for my constituents. So we get a little bit of that from some of the members from time to time. I would say those are the three areas.
I'm going to add Travis, you get a lot of mail at home during election season, right? You get those colorful flyers. Some of them are particularly nasty. And it's the, you've seen this before, right? It's so-and-so voted 15 times to raise your taxes. And even though you're right, this is where logic and reason kind of go out the window because it's campaigning and they're going to stretch the truth. And so it's being acute, having that sort of tally against you that you voted to raise taxes, even though, no, I didn't. I voted to give you a tool to decide if you want to do that in your community. I think that fear is pretty legit with those folks.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, hopefully this was helpful. We know all of our hearts are in the same place, right? And sometimes it's pretty heady trying to figure out exactly what the right thing is to do. But we really wanted to approach this from, a very tactical sense. If you're just trying to figure out what's your first step or your next step, and even if it's not just about this legislation, I think we have a very good time in history to make people more aware of what we do. And if you're nervous at all about how do I do something with the state legislature when, I don't have the authority or right or agreement or even know if my agency's on board. So I think that's one of the things we really want to get into on Monday in that Ledge 101 is just how can you utilize the association and how can you use an association voice? I mean, that's part of it, right? I'm the Ledge chair. And county has their own legislative person. So I just need to know which hat I'm on and they're aware. And I bring things to them that come up via the association. And, sometimes the county's ready to lobby behind it and other times they're not, but they can coexist and we can do a lot to educate and move forward. So, I think if you're running into roadblocks or you don't feel like we've answered the question that you're getting about why this is important or what you do with it, then please give us that feedback because we do want to make sure you have the information. And I'm volunteering all of us, right? If you need to have a conversation with somebody about the benefits of sales tax so that you can talk to your leadership or even to one of your councils, councils change over quite a bit. So it's not a one-time thing. And I think the more we have them at grand openings and involved in seeing what you do, I haven't really run into resistance. I mean, to Doug's point, some are less interested in taxes than others, but I'll just tell you right at budget time, everyone wants to give me projects. Everyone wants to tell me how to develop a park, right? Nobody's telling the people how to build roads or what the sewer system should look like. If there are provisos, they are 90% of them are coming my way because they care about it. So, how to use some of that interest to help them understand also where, if you only have one line item for revenue going towards the things that they're telling you matters, and then they feel like they're pinched because they're trying to decide between how to use, property tax on 12 different things. You can say, the folks who elected you and you keep telling me that what your folks want, there's a way to get that add on without having to take from some other area. So anything that we can do to have those conversations together. Again, just mentioning Monday, if you're up for another round, we call it Ledge Day 101. If you sign up for Ledge Day, you're going to get an email from WWRC, Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition, that there's just a little bit more of a prep of how the day is going to go. We really wanted to be able to set aside time for that very real tactical conversation. What are you legally allowed to do? And how do you feel more comfortable diving in to this type of dialogue? Lastly, I think, Derek, you asked about the handouts per se. Hunter and I shared some information. I wasn't really thinking that we were sending those out. We obviously have the information sheet on the legislation itself. On Monday, we also are developing, we have additional tools around how to make the equity case or health case. So we were bringing those forward at our meeting there and also putting them in the toolkit for Ledge Day itself. So kind of stay apprised, but if there's something specifically that you want to follow up on myself or Mary or Hunter about our use of sales tax, or even if it's helpful for you to have a copy of our Hunter slideshow or my budget in order to have a conversation with somebody, that I'd say reach out to us directly on that particular piece. But we're important, and I think people understand we're important, so don't be shy about at least starting the conversation. Any other lasting questions, things that we did not answer that you really wanted to have answered?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Roxanne, Mary, Hunter, and I think Doug's dropped off now, but I just want to say thank you. This has been very informative. I've learned a ton, and I feel like I can now somewhat intelligently speak about this to my electeds and my city manager. So I just want to thank you for all the great information, and I'll probably be reaching out to someone here soon.
Great. Thanks, Dave. And I know even in the handout, when you see things like no double accounting, or you don't have to use this for capital and bonding, or, whatever. Sometimes those words are just words and people don't really know what they mean or how they might apply. So anything to break them down. Anyone else? Last call. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully we see you Monday. Hopefully, letters of support, or if you're ready to move forward, we want to support you doing it. Thank you.